you hear what I was playing, Lane?
No, sir. I didn't think it polite to listen.
Well, I'm sorry for that. But for your sake, I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression.
Yes, sir.
As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life. Speaking of the science of life, have you got those cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
By the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shoreman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens! Is marriage really so demoralizing as that?
I do believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had little experience of it for myself up to the present. I've only been married once, and that was a consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I'm not sure I'm really interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It is not very interesting. I never think of it myself.
Well, very naturally, I'm sure. Thank you, Lane. That will do.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage are somewhat lax. Really, lower orders don't set us a good example. What on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Earnest Way.
How are you, my dear Ernest? Oh, what brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment around 5 o'clock. But where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It's excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours, neighbours.
You've got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire.
Oh, perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How intensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Well, hello. Why are these sandwiches and why are these cups? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, it is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
Might I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come up with pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic about proposing. It is perfectly romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe, and then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I shall certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algie. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no use speculating about that subject. Hey, please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
But you've been at them all the time.
Well, that is a very different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
Very good bread and butter it is, too.
Oh, my dear boy, you need not eat it as if you were going to eat it all. You act as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth would you say that?
But, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
That's nonsense.
It isn't. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin, and before I can allow you to marry her, you must clear up this whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? Well, what on earth do you mean? Or what do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room when he dined here last Thursday.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you've had it all this time? I wish to goodness you had told me. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There is no point in offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no difference. For now that I look at the inscription on the inside, I find the thing really isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you've no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
It is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. And more than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I am well aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It's not the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, she happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too. Lives up at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, aunt.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she's your aunt and lives up at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that surely an aunt should be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that all aunts should be exactly like your aunt. That's absurd. For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
But why does she call you her dear uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to her dear Uncle Jack. Well, there is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, whatever her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack after all, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in all my life. It is perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany. I'll keep this as proof. Your name is Ernest. If you ever try to deny it again, to me or to Gwendolyn or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that still does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come, old boy, you'd much better have the whole thing out at once.
Oh, dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It's a very vulgar thing to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on, and tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I am quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I shall reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to tell me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
I'll produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, I'm afraid there's nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as uncle from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, resides at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Well, where is that place in the country, by the way?
Oh, that is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
Well, I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I'm not quite sure you're going to be able to understand my real motives. You're hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian,
one must adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much either to one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town as often as I like, I have always pretended to have a young brother by the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. So that is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
Wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You should leave that to the people who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you're a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented a perfectly invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down to the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I should have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight at Willis's, for I've been really engaged on to Augusta for more than a week.
But I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It's very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dined there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I am always sent down with either no women at all or two. And in the third place, I know perfectly well whom she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next Mary Farker, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That's not very pleasant. Indeed, it's not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I wanted to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily's become a little too much interested in him. It's rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Earnest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That's nonsense. If I was to marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, and she's the only girl that I should ever see in my entire life that I should get married to, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Well, then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the theory the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and the happy English home has proved in half time.
Don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It isn't perfectly easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, my dear boy, if I can get her out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you at Willis's tonight?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
Those are not quite the same thing. In fact, the two rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. We leave no room for developments. And I intend to develop in many directions.
I am sorry if we are a little late, Algernon. I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I'd not been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I will have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolen?
Thanks, Mama. I am quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens! Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market today, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no difference, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour, from what cause I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I plan to set you down next to Mary Farker. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It is delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
Oh, I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Well, fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly mention a terrible disappointment. But the fact of the matter is, I have just received a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury seems to be very ill again. The doctors think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, I think it is high time that this Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd, nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathies with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I am constantly telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice, as far as any improvements in his ailments go. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I quite rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has already said whatever had to be said, which, to begin with, was probably not much.
Yes. I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. And I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. If one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn up if you'll accompany me to the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People seem to think them improper and either laugh, which is vulgar, or look shocked, which is worse. German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed, I believe is so. Gwendolen, you shall accompany me.
Certainly, Mama.
A charming day it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Welling. Whenever anyone talks to me about the weather, I always feel as if they mean something else. And that always makes me so nervous.
But I do mean something else.
I thought so. I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any girl I have ever met since, since I met you.
Yes, I am quite aware of the fact. And I often wish that, in public at any rate, you'd been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
Yes, but it is Earnest.
Oh, yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else, do you mean to say that you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I'm not all that very fond of the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I must say I think there are many much nicer names. I think, Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack. No. There is very little music in the name Jack. If any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, have been more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any poor woman who's married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. No, only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you're not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Then may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I feel it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you. Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you to say to me?
Well, you know what I've got to say.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it. I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one, I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. Wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from that semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma! I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise. Pleasant or unpleasant the case may be. It is hardly a matter she should arrange for herself. And now I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. Gwendolyn, while I am making these inquiries, you shall wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage. You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
No, thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you, Mr. Worthing, that you are not on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the Duchess of Bolton has. We worked together, in fact, but I should be quite prepared to add your name? Should your answers be what a truly affectionate mother requires? Do you smoke?
Well, I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man needs an occupation of some kind, and there are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I am of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracken.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, it produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it proved to be a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a pleasure or a profit. It gives one position and prevents one from having to keep it up. That's all that can be said about land.
Well, I own a country house with some land attached to it, of course. About 1,500 acres, I believe. But I do not rely on that for my primary income. In fact, as far as I can tell, the poachers are the only ones who make anything out of it.
A country house! How many bedrooms? Well, we can clear up that matter afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature, like Gwendolen, could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like, at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Ah, well, nowadays there is no guarantee of respectability. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us. Or come in the evening at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? Evidently he was a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
Well, I'm afraid I really don't know. I said I seem to have lost my parents, but it would be much nearer the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't know who I am by birth. I was, well, I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very kindly and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing's a place in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman with this first-class ticket to this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was in a handbag. A rather large floral print cloth handbag with handles to it. A rather ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James and Mr. Thomas Cardew find this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes. The Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life and remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I'm sure you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality of this handbag, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion. Has probably indeed been used for that purpose before now, but it could hardly be an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask then what you'd advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations quite soon, and try to produce at least one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at a moment's notice. It's in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Brack.
Me, sir? What has this to do with me? You could hardly expect Lord Bracknell and myself to allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good day, Mr. Worthing.
Good day! Don't play that ghastly tune, Algy! How idiotic you are!
All right, old boy. You don't mean to say that Gwendolyn has refused you? I know it is a way she has. She is always refusing people. I think it is most ill-natured of her.
Oh, Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. I've never met such a gorgon. I'll admit I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I've no doubt she is one. At any rate, she is a monster, without being a myth, which is, well, rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algy. I suppose I shouldn't go on about your own aunt in this way before you.
Oh, my dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the remotest knowledge about how to live, nor the smallest instinct about when to die.
That's nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue with you about it. You always want to argue about things.
Well, that is exactly what things were originally made for.
On my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. Now, you don't think that Gwendolyn could become like her mother in about 150 years, do you, Algy?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. And that is his.
Is that clever?
It is perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in modern life should be.
Well, I am sick to death of cleverness. Everybody's clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have.
I should very much like to meet them. What do they talk about?
Oh, the fools? About the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, have you told Gwendolyn yet the truth about your being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
Oh, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
What about Earnest? What about your profligate brother?
Oh, by the end of the week I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Oh, yes, my dear fellow, but it's hereditary. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You had much better say a severe chill.
Now, you're sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well, then. My poor brother Ernest is carried off quite suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother. Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that's all right. Cecily's not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She has a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays absolutely no attention at all to her lessons.
I should very much like to meet Cecily.
I shall take very good care that you never do. She's excessively pretty and is only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, one doesn't blur the sort of thing out to people. Gwendolyn and Cecily are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that happen after they've met, they will be calling each other sister.
No, women only call each other that after they have called each other a lot of other things. Now, my dear fellow, we really must go up and dress if we want to get a good table at Willis's. Do you know it is nearly 7?
Which is always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What should we do after dinner? Shall we go to the theatre?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Well, we could go to the club.
Oh no, I hate talking.
We might trot round the Empire at 10.
Oh no, I can't stand to go looking at things. It's so silly.
Well, then what on earth shall we do?
Nothing.
It's a lot of hard work to do nothing. However, I don't mind hard work where there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you've always adopted a strictly immoral attitude about life. You're not quite old enough to do that yet.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the look on Mamma's face today, I fear we never shall. Few parents pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. Although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she could possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. The Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service there, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long are you in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
May I walk you to your carriage, Madam Darling?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying. I don't think I shall be back till Monday. You can put up the dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunburys.
Yes, sir.
I hope it shall be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction.
There's a sensible intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my entire life. What are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm a little concerned about poor Bunbury, that is all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
That's nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Good day, Algie.
Day.